I hope that inspires you. I know it inspires me, and it gets me to work every day thinking about what it is that we're all here for, what it is that we hope to do and can do. The reason that we're holding this briefing today is because even with that inspirational message and cause up there, we've had people, we've had skeptics sort of suggest that it can't be done. We've had skeptics point out that malaria has been with us for centuries, and of course they're right. That it's claimed millions of lives. That there have been times over the years past, when it seemed that victory was in sight in some of the toughest regions of the world, only to see us fall short. But as we get ready for this year's historic Millennium Development Goals Summit, the good news is that this time is different. Armed with strong African leadership, exciting new technologies, unprecedented faith partnerships, and historic pledges of financial resources, the world is making real, measurable, sustainable progress. First, African leadership. This time is different because there is clearly a new generation of strong African leadership that's rising to take on this malaria challenge. While it's true that Africa can't conquer malaria alone, it's even more true that the killer disease can't be defeated unless Africans lead the way. And they are. At last year's UN General Assembly, 14 African heads of state joined together to rededicate themselves to the goals of ending malaria deaths by 2015. They launched a new coalition called ALMA, the Africa Leaders Malaria Alliance. We will soon hear from Ms. Joy Famafi, who leads ALMA's secretariat. ALMA has grown to a coalition of more than 35 heads of state. It's become a unique forum for African leaders to share ideas and best practices and to collaborate on their challenges. It has already begun tackling important issues like securing universal access to ACTs, removing taxes and tariffs on essential anti-malarial products, and increasing local production of high-quality anti-malarial interventions. But it isn't just strong leadership that's making a difference. More than ever before, our public health experts are armed with effective new technologies and tools. That's another thing that makes this time different. Just as with man's struggle against killers like smallpox and polio, our scientists have labored long and hard in pursuit of a vaccine against malaria. The great news is that researchers can now report historic progress. The first ever large-scale phase 3 trial of a malaria vaccine is now underway in 7 African countries. Some of the most exciting developments in our drive to end malaria deaths come not from new technology, but from new uses for old technology. Mobile phones are already commonplace in sub-Saharan Africa. Now there are amazing logistical and analytical tools in the global health world. Just ask Admiral Tim Ziemer, the U.S. Global Malaria Coordinator, whose presidential malaria initiative team is using mobile phones in Zanzibar to help cross the finish line. Of course, the leadership to defeat malaria isn't just coming from governments. It's also coming from our communities of faith. Nowhere in the world are faith networks more important or more influential than in Africa. Faith institutions, Christian and Muslim in particular, they can reach towns and villages that often seem cut off and inaccessible to everyone else. This time is different because faith communities are engaged like never before in this effort against malaria. For example, as Jean Duff, Executive Director of CIFA, the Center for Interfaith Action Against Global Poverty, will tell you, last year top Muslim and Christian leaders in Nigeria created an interfaith organization that brought together networks of religious leaders to combat poverty and disease. They've mobilized thousands of faith leaders and their followers in the pursuit of defeating malaria. And they're not alone. Faith-based groups from around the world, leading organizations like World Vision, are contributing resources and know-how in ways that are literally lifting millions of lives. But the truth of the matter is that in order for technology, in order for leadership to succeed, we all also need the necessary financial resources. And there are funding gaps that clearly remain. But this time is different because the financial tools to defeat malaria are within reach. In 2002, world leaders came together to create the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. As you'll hear from Natasha De La Moria, Executive Director of Friends of the Global Fight Against AIDS, TB, and Malaria. The Global Fund now funds 2/3 of all of the world's malaria projects. It provided treatment for some 140 million cases of malaria and supported the indoor residual spraying of more than 24.7 million African homes. In 2005, President Bush launched his Presidential Malaria Initiative. Under Admiral Zimmer's leadership, PMI distributed over 40 million malaria treatments and trained tens of thousands of healthcare workers. If there's a cautionary part to this tale, it's that more funding will be needed to keep our momentum going. So much progress has been made, but without robust new funding for the Global Fund and programs like PMI, we could lose so much of the gains that we've made. But as we look to the future, I think it's with a great sense of hope. And as we gather at the MDG Summit, we have to recognize that we've all of us, come an awfully long way in this battle. More families have access to life-saving tools than ever before, and as a result, malaria and child mortality are falling. History tells us that we cannot rest, that if we do, we'll fall short, as we sometimes have before. But this time we can and we will end malaria deaths in Africa. For all the reasons that I've stated and represented by these great speakers here today, this time is different.